send them in.
So I guess we can introduce ourselves. So hello, everybody. My name is Anthony Bludlovich. I'm currently the program director at Loyola Marymount's Marital and Family Therapy with Specialized Training in Art Therapy program. Today's presentation is really going to be for those who are interested in applying to the program and to go over admissions requirements, a little bit about the structure of the program, and hopefully leave some time at the end for any questions you might have. If there are specific questions you have pertaining to your unique situation, you can, Maru will put our emails in the chat, and you can email us for particular questions that you feel like may not be applicable to the entire group. So we'll try to get the group questions answered at the end, and then we can set up individual times to talk. Maru, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Maru Serricchio Joyner, and I am the clinical assistant professor at the MFT Art Therapy program. And I have been kind of co-program director with Anthony and kind of learning a little bit about that area. And so I'm here to support Anthony and kind of answer as many questions as we may be able to. And I'll be kind of more in charge of the chat. And so I will be, answering those questions. And of course, at the end as well, if you have any other questions, we'll be here for you. And that's me. I'm excited to see so many people interested in our program.
And if there's a question, Maru, that you feel is applicable in the chat to read aloud, I'll make sure to pause every once in a while to check in to see what might be good information for everyone to know.
Exactly.
All right, so let us start this PowerPoint. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so let's just get right into it. So as I mentioned before, we are the Marital and Family Therapy with Specialized Training in Art Therapy program at LMU. We are housed within the College of Communication and Fine Arts. This is our Dean Brian Keith Alexander. The reason I bring this up is because we are in the College of Communication and Fine Arts for a very intentional and purposeful reason. Because of the centrality of the art in our program is completely integrated. And we'll go over that in a little bit later too. Some programs have art therapy courses and MFT courses, but we are fully integrated where we discuss the intersection of them in all of our courses. So our identity as an art therapy program is shown in our placement in the College of Communication and Fine Arts. We are also, our founder here, Helen B. Lane Garden, sort of coined clinical art therapy, a technique that uses systems theories and other ways of incorporating art therapy into settings where you can be a primary practitioner. To some art therapy programs, you can be adjunctive. Here you have a dual degree in marital family therapy and art therapy, so you can be prepared for licensure and certification. Licensure as an MFT, certification as an art therapist. So most of you probably have a sense of what art therapy is if you are here, but art therapy is defined by the American Art Therapy Association is an integrative mental health and human service profession that enriches the lives of individuals, families, and communities through active art making, creative process, applied psychological theory, and human experience within a psychotherapeutic relationship. Art therapy facilitated by a professional art therapist effectively supports personal and relational treatment goals as well as community concerns. Art therapy is used to improve cognitive and sensory motor functions, foster self-esteem and self-awareness, cultivate emotional resilience, promote insight, enhance social skills, reduce and resolve conflicts and distress, and advance societal and ecological change. So there's a lot. But a 9-year-old client just said, it's time to draw on what's on my mind. Both equally applicable, but let's kind of break down the first one a little bit. So there's so many ways to sit yourself as an art therapist. Art therapists have an ethical obligation to sort of advance social justice and change. So there's a lot of different ways that people sit as an art therapist, the way they function within communities, within schools, within hospitals, within different spaces. So we're really interested in having everyone become the art therapist that they want to be, following the guidelines and the philosophy. So we're really excited about every time we have a new class, there's always new ideas. And it's such a new field. There's a lot of opportunity for growth and change and research. And it's not a lot of people are familiar with it as a discipline. I still, when I tell people I'm an art therapist, have to explain what that is. And though this 9-year-old client kind of just summed it up, a lot of people assume that if you're an art therapist, you work with children, which I personally work with mostly couples, doing relational counseling, sometimes a trouble, sometimes a quad, whatever comes in. But there's a lot of assumptions about who can benefit from art therapy, and our philosophy is everybody can. And I don't know, Madhu, if you want to share a little bit about your practice as well.
Yes, I, similarly to Anthony, see a lot of couples as well. Primarily right now, I'm doing art therapy through telehealth means, right? So remotely. So that's definitely changed the field quite a bit. That's been really interesting in our career lately. And then I do a lot of workshops or groups and things like that with particular populations. And so I do a lot of transforming grief and loss with cancer survivors or people who have stage 4 metastasized cancer and things like that. So there's a variety of things that can be done, and art therapy can be applied. So I have not seen actually children in a bit. So it's interesting what Anthony was saying.
Mm-hmm. So our program prepares you to work with a variety of populations. And as I said, it integrates art therapy in a family systems oriented sort of orientation, informed by psychodynamic perspectives. It embraces multicultural focus throughout the curriculum, and it is approved by the American Art Therapy Association, and it is also approved by the California Board of Behavioral Sciences. Because we have two identities in some way that we merge, we have two governing bodies, the Board of Behavioral Sciences for the MFT degree, and ADA, or the American Art Therapy Association, for the certification as an art therapist. This is our suite. If you were to be here, this is the beginning of it. So we're going to kind of walk you through it a little bit, the people you might encounter, and some of the courses you might be taking if you apply and get it. So our current dean is Dr. Louvinia Jackson. She is taking over as dean this year. And Louvinia Jackson published a book, Art Therapy and Cultural Humility, and is interested in that sort of transformative work. Here I am. I mentioned before, program director. I am a practicing artist, and I really situate myself as an artist identity and how I bring that into the program, and thinking about things like exhibition. Exhibition is research and ways of knowing. So my interest is a lot in performance, performance art, art therapy, and ritual process, and how those kind of combine in acts of healing. We have Jessica Bianchi, Dr. Jessica Bianchi, an assistant professor, currently the director of the Helen B. Langgarden Art Clinic, so Art Therapy Clinic. This is a clinic that we have in the department. We'll talk a little bit more about. It's a clinic that provides services to the community. It's also an opportunity for students who are in the program to have that as their practicum, where they practice and gain clinical hours. And there's a lot of exciting programming that happens there. We also have Dr. Joyce Green, who is an assistant professor and also the director of the Art Therapy Research Institute. Also within our department, we have a research institute dedicated to research, and that looks in all different kinds of ways, from looking at the clinical responses of participants in art therapy, looking at art shows, looking at archives, looking at the experience of art therapists. And Dr. Joyce Green has a specialization in international psychology, and is currently also doing the international program that we have in the summer. And then Maru, do you want to talk a little more about yourself? I could talk about you for you, but since you're here.
That would be fun to see. Yeah, so I actually am also an international psychologist. Just defended my dissertation last week. So I saw that you put the PhD in there.
I'm putting it in.
I don't even know if it's technically legal because I have not seen my diploma yet. but I'll
Well,
take it. I'll
okay.
take it. And I guess my focus on my dissertation, which is something I want to keep researching, has been loss and grief and bereavement support, especially arts-based research related to that. So that's me, and you get to know more about obviously us too as we continue on. So that's all I say for now.
And it's really important to note that our faculty is very active in the art therapy organization, active in publishing, active in showing, active in clinical work. So it's not just faculty that is taught forever and not had clients for a long time, that we're constantly engaged with a lot of different actions and are always adapting our program to meet the needs, including adding components about telehealth and technology and how to perform arts psychotherapy that way. We also have an amazing staff. Catherine Vogel-Richmond is our practicum coordinator. For a lot of MFT programs, when it's time for you to find an agency to practice and get your clinical hours, you're given a stack of acceptable agencies and you have to go interview and find them yourself. So it can be competitive and kind of stressful because as your first options fade away, you're just trying to find something before the end. Kathleen has done a great job of fostering relationships with agencies that hold spots for our students, and she talks to you one-on-one to figure out your interests, your needs, and maybe some hesitations to put you in a practicum placement she thinks would be ideal for you. And you interview, and you still have to assess if you're getting along, but it's not as much of a hustle or stress. We also have 2 practicum experiences, which we'll go over as well. So you have 2 opportunities to work with different populations and try different things to and it's nice to leave the program with that on your resume as well. Plus we have so many other engagements that you can participate in through the clinic and through the international program that you can have a lot of experience working with a lot of different populations when you leave the program. And then we have Lori Gloyd, our senior administrative coordinator, who sort of is the glue that holds everything together. You might have gotten emails from Lori, and Lori is the one who keeps track of all the programs. I don't know how she does it because I can barely, but keeps everything together. The clinic, the research institute, our international program, our program, admissions. So Lori does it all. So getting on Lori's good side is a good thing. All right. So now some of these pictures are very old. This is actual Dr. Bianchi when they were a student. There was also a picture of me when I was a student in these photos, which hopefully you will not notice and we'll skip right through. But we're just going to go through the first year, the first semester, and kind of get a sense of the program. And then we're going to go to the requirements. Okay. Pardon me as I'm fumbling because I'm trying to see your faces and see the screen too. So we're going to go through the 2-year track first. There's 2 different ways to engage with the program. One is a 2-year track and one is a 3-year track. We used to be called part-time, but it's not really part-time because the final year looks the same. So it just takes the first year and you do the first year in 2 years, and then the last year looks the same. So it can be quite a jump. You know, it feels kind of slow, and then all of a sudden you're full-time the final year. So we just call it the 3-year track. You're on campus for the first semester if you're on the 2-year track, 3 days a week, and you're taking a lot of courses. Now, the way that our program functions is primarily through self-reflection, through writing. There's not a lot of multiple choice tests. So it's not like you're studying cue cards and like memorizing things all night long and then forgetting them the next day. It's really about integrating this work by reflecting, sitting, pondering. So even though there's a lot of courses, I think the way that you engage with them, it makes it a little easier. So you start with a studio course where you sort of reflect on the clinical properties of art, and you get an introduction to the mental health services. So you kind of understand the system of mental health that you'll be working in, how it functions, some of the ways to navigate. And then you also get some other foundational courses and learning about the art therapy literature and research, learning about the fundamentals of marital and family system, the laws and ethics, and working with children with art psychotherapy. Now, even though it says fundamentals of marriage and family systems, you're learning the family systems and thinking about how to incorporate art into them. So some of you might have heard of like cognitive behavioral therapy. Well, we teach you cognitive behavioral therapy, but also how to utilize art to enhance the theoretical approach. So art has its own philosophies and theories, art therapy does, but it's also how can you utilize it to support other theoretical orientations. Now then on Thursday, if you were just on the 3-year track, and I'll repeat this again, you would only be in class the Tuesday and the Wednesday, and you would not go to class on Thursday. But if you're on the 2-year track, you come back on Thursday to take psychopathology and psychopharmacology, where you learn about the diagnoses that you might provide as a clinician, and also the medications that could be given, that not by you, because they have to be prescribed by like a psychiatrist or a nurse practitioner, someone who has the ability to prescribe. But it's important to understand the medications, how they might affect a person, and to understand their relationship to the diagnosis. And also understanding psychological tests and art therapy assessment, how to understand them and incorporate them into treatment. And then as well as group psychotherapy, because believe it or not, the next semester you will be in practicum already. And so a lot of times you'll be co-leading a group. So understanding group dynamics and how to work with groups is taught here. It's a very full-time, a very full experience. It's a lot of work, but the next semester we're preparing you for working with clients. But there's some experientials that we want to talk about. So in the child psychotherapy and in a lot of the courses, we try to give as many experientials as possible. So one of the things you do in child is you go to Dolores Mission, where you get to observe children in their natural habitats. You're just kind of learning about looking at the kind of developmental states of children and how they advance in drawing. You're kind of drawing with them and collecting information and kind of learning to understand them in cultural contexts, and just help you get comfortable in that space. And we've done it all virtually, which was great because we were able to like get to multiple classes, and we were also doing it in person. So who knows what the world will bring. LMU has lifted their mask mandate just yesterday. So students can wear masks, don't have to wear masks. So we're just rolling with the punches. But the one thing that I have really appreciated about our program is we, I think, have gotten stronger. And because we had a clinic within our program, we could continue to provide services when other practicum sites had shut down and left people without places or agencies that were prepared for telehealth. So we have so many embedded in services that we're able to get our students hours that they needed to graduate. So we were really adaptable, which I was really sort of like, impressed the way we handled it. Now, were there tears? Were there sleepless nights? Yes, mostly from me, but we made it through. And it was just a really remarkable thing to see. Oh no, that's me. Let's skip it. Okay, so the next thing that we're getting to the second semester, and here you're already preparing to go into your practicum. Now, again, if you are in the third year, you're not preparing for practicum until you finish those Thursday classes. So if you're doing a 2-year program, the next semester you are in classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and the rest of the time you're going to have a 16-hour per week practicum. So we're going to continue to help you understand the theories of marriage and family therapy and to continue to incorporate them into your practice. You're also going to have adolescent art psychotherapy because those children have grown up so fast, and now you're learning to deal with adolescence. And also a family observation where you get to see the clinical work kind of done, kind of like more observation and more like analyzing cases. Thursday, now it seems like a lot of courses, but some of these courses are like drug and alcohol and adult actually kind of share a 15-week slot. So we're on a semester system where the courses are 15 weeks, but adult is 10 weeks and drug and alcohol is 5. So that one is kind of one course in a way. So on Thursday, you're kind of going to be in 3 courses. Sometimes not, but intro to research is only 5 weeks as well. So the Thursdays kind of be a little bit lighter than it looks here because the courses aren't just completely 15-week courses. So again, they grow up even faster because now you're dealing with adult psychotherapy. And continuing 612, which is issues and applications, is really there to help support you in your practicum. What do you do in the first session? How do you what do you do with the art? How do you talk about these things? So it's really more of like helping you support your practicum experience. And then your intro to research, because the next semester in your second year is a little more on your research project and your final project. So we're going to just give you a little taste. And then you're in your practicums. So again, if you are in the 3-year track, you would only be taking those Tuesday courses and not the Thursday classes, because that's going to be all Thursday, all second year. All right. Are there any questions in the chat or anything questions before we go into your second year? Okay, I must be really great.
No questions in the chat yet.
Okay. So the other thing for adolescents, there's usually a trip to juvenile hall. and where the students will work with incarcerated adolescents in the juvenile justice system, another experiential. One of the things that we notice is people will come into the program and have a sense of who they would like to work with, but sometimes what populations they would not like to work with. And I really think it's great to kind of challenge yourself in that space, because sometimes the populations that we might be the most reluctant to, mostly because we've maybe our own inadequacies or inability to feel like we can hold that space, really become some of the favorite populations to work with. So there was a lot of anxiety about when we were first going to juvenile hall from a lot of the students. And in fact, so much so that Deborah Linish, who was the instructor at the time, who just retired from the program and was the department chair for many years, decided to do a little survey graph to see the before and after. And noticed that there was a somewhat apprehension, and some, like a little bit of a little wave here, and decided to reassess after the students went to juvenile hall. And this was what they felt afterwards. So you can see a huge decrease in apprehension because of how much bias we might have about a population or group of people, depending on the cultural narratives we hear or a lack of exposure. So having these experientials in the class and different practicum experiences and different other ways to engage with the clinic, I think it really helps just expand and challenge and grow. Because the most important thing for a therapist to be is self-reflective and aware of our own biases, assumptions, and beliefs, so we're not doing harm unconsciously in a session. So a lot of the program is about self-reflection and paying attention to self. All right. Now, we are going to go into our second semester already. So this is going to, this just kind of talks about the practicum. Okay. So the practicum in the second semester is 15 weeks. It's the duration of your class, like a class. And you're usually in a short-term treatment model, because the first practicum, you're really just getting used to working with people, sitting and getting that experience. So they tend to be in shorter term places where you're not necessarily seeing clients for long extended periods of time. You will have an on-site supervisor as well as an off-site art therapy supervisor. Unless a rare thing occurs where you have an art therapy supervisor that's on site, because sometimes you will have that. So sometimes you might have one who does both. But this is, you're getting a lot of supervision, and you're getting supervision in groups to kind of learn from each other and help support you in that place. So you have two people whose licenses are helping support you, because a lot of people feel like, I don't know what I'm doing when I go into my first practicum. And that's a good attitude to have, other than I know exactly what I'm doing, because that's probably when you're going to make the most mistakes. So students feel not prepared for it. And I just remind them, it is a class. You are learning still, and you have a lot of support to make sure that you can effectively move through. Here's a little video on the practicum. Maru, if you can hear it, you can just give me a thumbs up, because I can see you, to make sure that the sound's okay.
Practice the clinical learning that students are getting in the classroom. So they go out into the field and they work with actual clients, providing art therapy to benefit the clients as well as to allow them to learn really how to do this work. What's really unique about the practicum training at LMU is that we have long-standing relationships with many agencies throughout Southern California. Additionally, our students are placed directly into their agencies and do not have to go out into the community to try to find their own placements. And the agencies and the students really benefit from this partnership.
The agency I worked at is the Children's Hospital of LA in the Expressive Arts and Therapies department, where we have art therapy, dance therapy, and music therapy.
I was placed at Department of State Hospitals Metropolitan. It's a psychiatric hospital, and I was working with people who were under conservatorship, meaning they were deemed gravely disabled due to their mental illness and were under the care of a public guardian.
In my first year, I was at a practicum called Exodus Recovery. It was an inpatient short-term residential facility for adults suffering from mental illness.
The agency that I worked at was the Hound V. Landgarten Art Therapy Clinic here at LMU, and I worked at Dolores Mission School in Boyle Heights.
The types of clinical experiences our students get training in are wide-ranging, everything from hospitals to residential treatment centers to outpatient clinics and therapeutic schools. While at LMU, Students are gaining hours towards registration as an art therapist with the Art Therapy Credentialing Board at the same time that they're pursuing licensure in the state of California as a marriage and family therapist. At LMU, our program is designed to be fully integrated so that at the same time they're learning the theories of marriage and family therapy, they're also learning how to do art therapy interventions.
So an image I did in practicum that reflects how I felt about practicum was based on my art therapy supervisor's recommendation to do art in response to how I worked with my clients and how I saw myself helping them. And I actually used a lot of materials from the hospital, so hospital gloves, band-aids, and so forth, to make a response piece of working with one of my clients.
What I learned most about art therapy and practicum was that sometimes just witnessing is enough. I think art is a great vehicle for that because it really allows a very special sort of interaction and space between therapist and client. So to just be just a witness of someone through their creative process, through the process of them externalizing something that's so personal and internal, I think that that was a really great piece for me to learn what art can do.
What I learned the most during practicum was flexibility. Since the population I was with, there was a lot of mental illness. I learned flexibility in tailoring the art therapy directives to the clients.
What I learned the most about art therapy in my practicum was that it's an incredible tool to be able to connect to the children in a way that verbal communication would not allow.
And there you have it. All right.
Do you mind if I step in? Because I know there's some questions that.
Oh no, please step right in.
And maybe you have, you know, historical information, but there was a question about kind of the 2-year and the 3-year. And so just kind of to clarify for everyone, you usually, right, come in with a decision of which track you're taking, right? So you come in and you say, okay, I'm doing a 2-year, I'm doing a 3-year. However, life can happen. And if in between being in the 2-year track, you need to change to 3-year, it is possible, but that has to be kind of discussed and approved by really the program director, the chair, the faculty.
Yes, exactly. There's a form to fill out to request moving tracks. It can throw people off a little bit because if you've completed your Thursday classes and then you just might kind of throw off the pace. So there might be gaps of semesters where you don't have any classes to take. So we just try to really assess really early on to see if the 2 versus the 3-year track is working. And when we get to the end, I'll show you what the 3-year track looks like again and talk about a little bit of what students have thought about the benefits and of each track and some of the maybe downsides. And anything else that was helpful, Maru?
No, that's it.
All right. So our summer session, we are currently, so there is a opportunity to be able to go to, work with art therapists in different countries. We've been doing this virtually now, and we're not quite sure what the iteration is going to look like, but working with art therapists in Mexico, Israel, and really trying to kind of figure out ways to collaborate and think about the ways that this work is done in different spaces and places. We used to go to San Miguel de Allende every year. That, of course, we weren't able to do. So instead of just deciding to not do anything, we've actually expanded and reached out to other places, take advantage of the virtual format. We're trying to work towards a hybrid model where there can be virtual interactions and there can be places that we can go and have that experience. There's also a couple of courses that you'll have to take in the summer as well. Aging, long-term care, and trauma. These are, there's 2 summer sessions. So the program usually starts at the end of August and it ends the beginning of May. So you have May, June, July, and August, usually 4 months between the semesters. However, there is summer session 1, which goes from like May to about June, the middle of June. And during that time, you will have to take these 2 courses because they're required by the BBS. And we just thought, well, we'll just give you these little ones over here so that way you don't have such a huge workload, but also don't have to, take them outside of the program. And that means you could be done at the end of June and still have half of June, July, and August off. We also have the other summer session too, where we have an international program that is optional. You do not have to participate in that. And that usually is the first 2 weeks of July. Still gives you a nice little chunk of vacation time if you choose to take it. So this is different now. So I'm going to skip over this because we don't know what this is going to look like, except right now we're working on exciting adventures and opportunities in the international landscape this semester. So when you all, if you're applying next year or the year after, could look very different. But usually in the Mexico program, it's been these 2 classes on just kind of understanding the field work, understanding culture. But now we're expanding that to be more of an international focus. So it's going to be exciting, whatever it is, but it's optional.
I can share a minute or two about, so the international program I was a supervisor, and so I participated in it. And it was actually really incredible to see how many people we could reach, because it was Israeli, Mexican, and United States art therapists. However, the population we reached, right? And so the first week was learning certain cultural components and some of the theory, but then we actually put it into practice. And so we had groups so I ran the loss and grief group with my group, my therapists, and they did group therapy with people from all over Latin America. I mean, we had people from Venezuela, Argentina, Mexico, like full on. So we were able to actually reach so many people. And so we're gonna do that again this year.
Thank you, Maru. So you had a full year, and now you're coming back for your final year if you're in the 2-year track. And here you are going to be only in class on Tuesdays, and the rest of the time you're in a 20-hour per week practicum. And so on Tuesdays, you have cultural considerations in marital family therapy, where we really look into the bias, assumptions, and beliefs, looking at cultural humility, looking at the sort of complexities of working with different populations, but also the complexities of our own identities and how we bring them into the space. You're continuing to get support in marital and family therapy theories. And now you're really focusing on your research project. So graduating, you will work on a research project. Typically, you're working a cluster of students. So they're faculty-led projects. Faculty we're doing research all the time. And one of the current research project I'm leading is looking at students' relationship to art making before, during, and after their programs, to see how that affects the work they do with clients, how much art they're using, and to think about how our artist identity affects our relationship to our art therapist identity. And they're doing a survey, but they're also putting a show together about that, just to see if there's anything in the programs can do in their curriculum to help support individuals, because sometimes it might be tempting to not do the art because you have another license, an MFT, and someone just sitting and talking could feel like, oh, I could just do this. So we want to make sure we can support the continual use of art because it's such a special process. But you work with the team, just kind of like how a lot of good research is done. If you have an individual project that you really are passionate about, you can propose it for a faculty sponsor. But most of the time you select from some research projects, you work in a cluster based on your strengths. So if you're not that great writer, someone else can maybe edit. So we really try to help you understand research as a collective and team effort, because there's a lot of research opportunity in this field. And then you're, like I said, in your practicum, your second practicum for 20 hours a week. Now this practicum extends the entire year, and you might be asked to have different vacation time, because if you're school-based, you might want to they might ask you to take their spring break instead of our spring break. But for the most part, you're there for the full year. Your second practicum is a little bit, again, 30 weeks in duration, 20 hours a week, and it's longer term. Now you've sort of gotten a little bit of a taste of what it's like to sit in that space. You still have an on-site supervisor and therapy supervisor, but the supervision is one-on-one or smaller group. So you have more of that individual focus. There are so many different placements. There are more added to this map. I should update it, but all over, and including San Diego. We have a lot of students who commuted from San Diego or partially, had like a place to crash while in class here. So Kathleen is always creating new practicums for students. So a lot of times students bring in their concerns, and sometimes that's location, which is fair. We also try to find practicums, especially the second year practicums, that will hire our students. And that's how I when I graduated from the program in 2008, I was hired right on from my practicum. So I didn't have to look for a job. Now, that's not everyone's case. One, you might not want to work there. Two, they might not have a job for you, but we just do try to find places that have a tradition of that space. Okay, before we get into the fourth semester of of your program in the second year, and anything in the chat, Maru, to bring up? All right, your final semester, if you're in your second year, still only Tuesdays, and you're still in your practicum, but now you're taking a shorter term course of assessment, intervention, and intimate partner violence. Another shorter course, which is human sexuality, which is again a 5-week course that segues into ethics, and professional ethics and identity, which is now an art making course where you kind of think about your own identity, kind of integrating everything you've learned to think about yourself as an art therapist and reinforcing some of the laws and ethics that you learned throughout the program. But now you have a little bit more lived experience of those laws and ethics. So to kind of understand them more deeply. When you graduate, you are eligible to take one of the 2 exams for licensure as an MFT in California, which is the law and ethics exam that you take kind of right after you graduate. So this course directly kind of helps prepare you for that exam as well. And you are working on your research paper, completing it and having it turned in by May so you can graduate and have a lovely life. Now you are continuing to be in your practicum and thinking about now potentially terminating, which is the word to use when you end therapy. It sounds very, very harsh, but terminate with the client and kind of going through that process. Some people don't, some people stay on or segue, but that is what it looks like. Now, if you are in the 3-year program, as I mentioned, you're just not taking any Thursday courses. So in your second year, all those Thursday courses that were part of it, that just becomes your whole second year. So some people feel a little not as engaged because they're like, I'm only here 1 day a week. You're also are starting with a different cohort because your cohort you came in with has already taken these classes. So you start your first year with one group of students and then you meet another group. That might be great. You're like more people to network with. Others feel a little like they need more of that community and that kind of wanting to be with the same group of people as you continue forward. However, it depends on how big the 3-year program is. Sometimes we have 4 people in it. Sometimes we have 7. Sometimes we only have 1. The program is really more geared towards 2-year. But we can have that 3-year program be flexible. As many people are kind of interested in that we can hold, depending on how many people we can place in practicum. We have a very small cohort, usually of around 25, because we don't want to, inundate the field with art therapists who won't be able to get employment. 2, we believe that like having those intimate small group experiences and learning from each other is essential in self-reflection, so you don't get lost. You have to be present and be there. But for some people that they like that, and others are just like, for work reasons or childcare reasons or learning reasons, decide the 3-year is a better pace for them. But like I said, it just takes the first year and takes the Thursday classes out of it. In the last year, it's the same. You're still there only on Tuesdays and you still have to do 20 hours of practicum, and that's to meet the BBS requirements. So it feels like going from kind of slow because you won't start your practicum until your second year. So yeah, that's kind of the difference between the 2 programs. And if you have more questions, we can talk about them too. Just going to quickly highlight, to give more context to the program directors that I talked about, as Dr. Bianchi is in charge of the Helen B. Linggarden Art Therapy Clinic. So there's a lot of different programs, but a lot of what they're doing now is they go to schools and other places to do programming with students, places that aren't institutions that would like the therapeutic services but don't necessarily have the means to do them themselves. So even though you can see a ribbon cutting ceremony here, that door does not lead to anything but the small library that we have here that is for art therapy resources, because the clinic is not a place, it is a collective of art therapists who go where they're needed. But they meet on campus and will sort of have supervision. But it's really, there was a few programs that would come to our campus, but for the most part, we go where we're needed. And also one of the things that you can be trained to do there are family art evaluations, having families make art and using that as an evaluative system to help determine treatment goals. There's also opportunities to engage in the clinic upon graduation. There's 2 fellowships, paid positions in the research and clinical fellow that you could kind of continue to sort of stay connected that way. Now we have the Research Institute. We also have our own journal that we publish, peer-reviewed. It's legitimate. The Journal of Clinical Art Therapy. And so we're really interested in continuing to not just teach, but advance, push back, think about the field itself. And so there's a lot of things that the Institute does. It encourages visiting scholars to come. We had an art historian who was interested in the switch of art as kind of more meaning making, and came and took some courses with us, Suzanne Hudson from USC, and really shared her expertise as an art historian and sat in on the classes and led some research groups. We have faculty talks where the faculty will share their interest and their research. We also have AdArc, which is an alumni research collective. So if you graduate from the program and you're really interested in continuing research, there's a support group for you where you can get together and have some accountability and some help and using some resources from the university to help you with your own research. I mentioned we have our own journal, and every year we have an annual research symposium where we ask someone to come as a speaker, share about their insights of research and what that means to them. And usually we pair it with an art show as well, where artists, or people who use art as a way of knowing, can display their work. Last year we had it virtually, and I can put in the website, I think that's still up, but it was atgallery.art, and it just was more about 2020 and how people coped and pushed and were challenged by that time. So it's a little virtual little gallery because we weren't able to do it in person. So that is our program in a very small, nutshell, because there's so much going on that in wonderful things and a lot of opportunities. But some of you might want to know, how do I get in? And I'll tell you that right now. So we have some prerequisites, 18 semester units in art. And now these do not have to be from an established or accredited college or university. If you worked in a private studio with someone or in some class, you can document those hours. They just have to be, we just count the hours as like a unit. So whatever discipline, it doesn't have to be specific. Some programs break down into clay or photography or painting. Any art units will count. There might be some courses you feel are studio courses that don't necessarily look so on a transcript if they are from an accredited institution. If you have any questions, you can send the transcripts to myself and I'll let you know if they'll count or not. And the same for your psychology courses, because the psychology prerequisites are 12 semester hours, and they have to be within the last 5 years and for a letter grade. Now, you might say, I took a class 7 years ago and I think it's still relevant, so I can review that as well. And just that it will go for review if it's older than 5 years. Why? Because the field changes. So if you took a class with like Carl Jung, it might be a little different now than thinking about it would be amazing, but there might be a little bit difference of theories around it. So we just want everyone to come in with a general base of knowledge so we can build on that general base. In addition to the 12 semester hour credits, as opposed to the art, which anything you want to take would be fine, there are specific courses we want you to take, which is a developmental, which can either sometimes look like lifespan or child or adult, and an abnormal. And the abnormal sometimes might have a different name with it, but it's more about like the different diagnoses and things like that. And so out of those, the rest can be whatever, right? An intro to psych and something that you're interested in. And these courses have to be from an accredited university.
I was going to jump in for the international students and just say that if there are any international transcripts, your transcripts must be sent to the graduate admission. And I can give you the link if you need that, and your transcripts have to be evaluated, right? Since they're not going to be accredited in the United States.
Yeah, and there's usually, like, we've had people apply from all over the world, and there's usually services that help translate the courses into units as well, because it might not even be the same system. So they'll kind of evaluate the transcript and give us a report of what this equates to in the United States measurements of academics. So what are you required? You need a bachelor's degree. Some people are in progress with their bachelor's, and that's okay. When they apply, they're ready to get right into graduate school afterwards. So it's okay if these requirements are in progress, as long as they'll be completed by the time August begins of when you would enter the program. So it's helpful to have a plan. So if you don't have all your prereqs of psych or art and you said, I'll take them somehow, it might make us a little nervous. If you say, I know I need these classes, I can take them in the spring, and then I can take 2 in the fall and 1 in the summer, and I'll be done by the time, then we feel like pretty good about it, because we just don't want you, we can't admit you if you haven't had your prerequisites. We just want to make sure that there's a feasible plan, in even if you don't have them completed when the application is due. So let's see. So testing, we are no longer requiring testing. There used to be an MAT or GRE requirement. We're still offering, if you'd like to send us your GRE scores, please do so. Oftentimes people choose to do that because they feel that their academics, perhaps they went to school a while ago, and they don't feel like their academics really match who they are, where they are academically now, or maybe they weren't as motivated. And so they want to show more evidence for the academic, because we're looking for, can you handle the academics of the program? We're also looking for, like, in people who are introspective and have a good constitution and character. So you are showing us you, and so you might feel like the evidence that you're showing doesn't quite reflect you. So the GRE is one way to give additional evidence of saying, like, yeah, this is something I can do. But also, when you have your letters of recommendation and autobiography, is your ability to contextualize yourself, because not everyone is the best student, because the institution is particularly geared for a type of learning and a type of person. So if you struggled in those spaces, to just contextualize that. So if you feel like something on paper doesn't look so great, the letters of recommendation, by having people speak on your behalf, and the autobiography, where you're emphasizing yourself and contextualizing, who you are, is a good opportunity to sort of like explain that to us, to show us who you are, because we're looking for well-rounded clinicians from diverse backgrounds and experiences. And we understand that that's not going to be cookie cutter. Everyone's not going to have the same journey. So also the portfolio, showing us art. We would like a variety of media. It doesn't have to be professionally done, it doesn't have to be in a class, but just to show that you work with different materials. Because if someone's so fixed in one material, they could limit access to their clients and say, well, I only do watercolor. And then our clients might not respond to that. We want to think about them as interventions that are beneficial to the client. So just a variety of material. And you're going to choose one of those images and kind of write a little statement about them. What we're looking for is just self-reflection and a connection, an emotional, psychological connection to it. So choosing a technically really nice drawing that maybe you don't have a lot of connection to probably isn't the best. So if you did some beautiful landscape that you had to do for a class, and you think like, this is really good, but there's no psychological, emotional, or connection to it, probably not the best one to use. There'll be an online interview, which is kind of not really an interview. It's mostly you answering questions to a blank screen that will be prompted to you. We'll just ask you a couple of questions just to get a feel of you. Questions just related to yourself and to your interests in art therapy. And then there'll be a prerequisite checklist where you can just check off and let us know everything that you've completed and what's pending to be completed. So those are the things that you sort of will kind of be prepared to turn in. A lot of this is done through the admissions process through Slate, so you can upload things and come back to them. Some of the things like transcripts are sent directly to graduate admissions, but it's very clear when you press apply, it kind of helps you guide you through that. People ask about the autobiography, and how can I tell my whole story in 10 to 12 pages? And you can't. But you can give us pivotal moments that help us understand the question of why do you want to be an art therapist? What experiences have brought you to this moment? And again, we're looking at self-reflection, psychological understanding. So if you've gone through something and you're just telling us the things you've gone through without reflecting on how that impacted you or what you were thinking about, we probably might be a little bit like, well, I know what happened to this person, but I don't understand their lived experience of that process. And that's a really important thing for a therapist to be able to do, right? All right. So you can just go online and start your online application by just going on to lmu.edu. And we're under the College of Communication and Fine Arts, which is really important to remember because there's other sort of counseling degrees in the department that are under the School of Ed and other places. So just remember that we're under the arts. So when you go under College of Communication and Fine Arts, you'll be able to find our degree in Master's in Marital Family Therapy with a specialization in art therapy. So your recommenders for your letters, it's one of those things where you just put their email addresses in and then they get prompted to, write you a letter. Of course, let them know it's coming. And so it's good to kind of have this stuff ready to upload. But again, you can come back to the application once you've submitted. The deadline for fall of 2023 is going to be November 21st, 2022. So you have till November if you're interested in this year. And again, this is all available on our website as well. All it's kind of detailed out there for you. You will also, if you make it, not everyone does, but you come to the second stage of the interview, you actually will do a virtual group interview where we've done this in person, but we realized it's kind of nicely equitable. Some people had to fly out for a day to interview and then fly out. So we're just making it all on Zoom, where we'll break the applicants into smaller groups and we'll engage in art making. So we'll give you like, hey, bring these art supplies. There'll be faculty that will kind of lead you through an art experience to share a little bit about who you are, talk about your interest in the program. So you can have a little bit of that. There'll also be opportunity on that day to have a brief one-on-one with the program director and department chair to answer any specific questions that we might have about your application and anything you have specific to answer or would like to ask us during that day. But we already know the dates are going to be February 4th or 5th. We'll ask you which you prefer because we do both. There might be religious observations or things you're doing that day that will impede you. So we ask and try to do the best to prioritize your needs between the 4th and the 5th. And that's the second stage of the interview. And by that point, usually by the end of February, beginning of March, you will know if you've been accepted into the program. And so the students, the applicants that just applied found out last week their status. And it's really difficult because sometimes we have a lot of great candidates, but again, we have a small cohort. So we really try to think about the diversity of age and experience and backgrounds and cultures, because we want to make sure that you're in a cohort that you can learn from each other as much as you're learning from us and probably more. So some people don't get in the first time, they reapply and they do. It's just a very complicated process. We have a rubric, we figure it out. There's some math involved, and then there's some, making sure that we're representing a diverse group. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for. It's not the cheapest program in the world, but I feel it's quality. The cost 6-unit program right now, and the cost per unit currently is $1,398. So it is not inexpensive. There's a lot of grants and scholarships and opportunities for students. There are graduate assistantships because we don't have an undergraduate program. We don't have a TA process. So oftentimes if you're in a graduate degree, you can sometimes TA undergraduate classes and make some money that way. Well, we have something within the CFA, the College of Communication and Fine Arts, where you can work with one of the instructors in the CFA as a assistant. And sometimes that's like prepping for classes and other things. There's the gallery, we have a gallery in the CFA as well. And so you can kind of, it's like work, but you're getting compensated some money. There's a lot of scholarships you can apply to. They're not substantial in the way that they're going to cover everything, but some people have did a good job of like looking for awards and scholarships. Most people apply for financial aid and they pay off and they have loans, and I paid off my loans a while ago, so it's possible. And so Jennifer Bon at lmu.edu is the person to contact if you have questions about financial aid or how to do this. But we'll go over the organizations that support us, and sometimes if you go to their websites, you can apply for grants and scholarships. You never know what's happening depending on what administration we're under when it comes to the government allowing for loan forgiveness for individuals who work in community mental health. There's a lot of people I know that agree to work in community spaces for an X amount of years with the agreement that the rest of the loans will be paid off when they finish their kind of service to that space. What prevents you from going into completely a private practice, which some people want to go, because if you're looking and making the most money in this field, private practice is the way to go. current therapists in LA are charging $200 an hour for therapy. So, and again, it works on your own ethics and how you want to slide your scale, but there are loan forgiveness opportunities as well. All right, there's a lot of support on campus. It's a small university, but that means you get a lot of attention. And so there's an academic resource center if you need help with academics. They even cater specifically to our students. We have an amazing library liaison, Alexandra Justice, who can help you with research or anything you need. We have a graduate student association, and we also have our own art therapy student association, career development, and then there's all these other groups, affinity groups, that if you would like to connect to a broader LMU campus, that there's so much opportunity being such a small program. There's a lovely gym. It's just like, it's a lovely place. So if you're gonna be here and pay that much, I recommend you just take full advantage of all of it, and we can help you do that while you're here. And again, I think it's the best program, but I'm not just saying that. I think there's some evidence behind it, but anyway, our professional organizations are as follows. So we have the American Art Therapy Association, the Southern California the Southern California Art Therapy Association, which is like a smaller chapter of the art therapy American one. And then we have the CAMT, which is the California Association of Marital and Family Therapy. If you go there, and maybe Madhu, you can put some of those links in, you can look for different things that are going on, but also some scholarship opportunities for incoming students or continuing students. And often if you join as a student, you join at a reduced fee too, so you can take advantage of things. Being a member of CAMT is especially helpful. You get legal advice, you can call their lawyer, you get a lot of different support, you get journals, also through the American Art Therapy Association. It's good to have that support of organizations. And so employment. So 86% of our 2020 graduates are employed 6 months after graduation. We'll follow up again to see, but 14% were not looking. So that so that's the rest of them. And then 4 people didn't respond. So we don't know those 4. But out of the people who responded, 86 were employed, and the other 14% were not currently looking, mostly because the pandemic shifted things for them when it came to who staying home and taking care of kids, or like how they had to maneuver for that space. So it's kind of a different year. Usually our number is higher than 86% previous years, but it is not because they're not employable. It is because of just their own life circumstances that they decided not to look or took a break. Some people want to take a year off or a break, and that's perfectly great. But we try to make sure that, you know, we're always checking these numbers, because we want to make sure that we are graduating people who can get jobs, because this is it's a degree that ends in a clinical licensure that is supposed to make you employable. We also have an Instagram. I don't have Instagram, but I hear it's a thing. And so if you're interested in seeing some things that are up there, it's LMU Art Therapy. And you can kind of see some of the things that are happening around. I don't know how updated it's been lately, but it will be soon. And that leads us to questions. If anyone has anything they would like to ask, I'm going to stop sharing this right now. And then if anyone has any questions, and again, if you have Maru, if you can put our emails in the chat. And if you have anything specific that
Uh-oh. Did we lose Anthony? Well, he's right across. He might just come into my office. All right, well, let's continue. So I will put our names and email in the chat. Hold on one second. I'm coming.
Hi, everyone.
I was like, you might just come. All right, come on in.
We're in the same room now. We were just across the hall. Hi.
Here,
My computer just kicked me off of Zoom and wouldn't let me back on.
we're like, we lost him. Here, that's, oh, they can see both.
They
of
can
us.
see both of us.
Okay.
May I just turn a little bit?
Yeah, go
Okay.
for it.
Hi. Yeah, our offices are right across from each other, but we couldn't be in the same room where it would be anyway. So if you have any questions for us, now we're here together, we can support each other emotionally. Do anyone have anything they feel would be helpful for everyone? Paige.
I actually have a quick question, and I'm sorry if there's any noise in the background.
Oh.
one of my questions was, what is the number of students that you will be accepting for this, this cohort?
So usually around 25. It depends on if we have students who delay, because sometimes people get in and defer for a year, and so they're counted in the next class, but usually 25.
Okay, 25. And then who would, oh no, I'm sorry. I am looking into another program right now, and it might dip into this program. So I'm guessing, I guess the question is, would we still be considered as an applicant even though we are currently in a program, or do we have to be free as students to be able to join?
I mean, your business is your business. As long as you can complete the program, that, and be kind of transparent about that.
And I would say it would depend on what program, right? Because I mean, obviously it's still your choice, but time availability. It is a pretty rigorous program.
Yeah, that was my concern. I'm still wondering if I should do it, but it's a speech language pathology program. And I was guessing, it would go quite hand in hand. I mean, it would be a good thing to have under my belt, right? With the art therapy.
And this is something, if you want to email us and we can talk more specifically and look exactly where the overlap is and how that's going to look, it's something we can help guide you through.
Oh, that would be so great. Okay, so who should I email?
Either one of us, maybe
or both of us. Yeah, both of us, so that whoever sees it first can get to.
Okay.
Okay,
so,
that's
great. We have a few hands. So Paige, if you want to go first.
Thank you. Yeah. I have a couple of questions. One, just because we were deferment, how many years does that apply for?
I'm saying how many years of what?
Like if you defer, how
you can defer two years.
2 years, okay.
Yeah,
and then I'm curious, is there mandatory counseling required for students, or like what does the sort of mental health support look like? You guys talked about self-reflection, like, if things come up, like what does that process look like?
Yeah, that's great. We would love everyone to be in therapy and make it part of the program. Legally, we can't make you go to therapy, but we really encourage everyone to have their own therapist to have that experience. There's also on-site services, but they're not really long-term therapy. They're like, if you're having an experience, we have a therapist on campus who can help you through that particular moment and kind of refer you to services that are more long-term. There's also, we help you to identify like where to go. So this might be an issue you talk about with an instructor, with the supervisor, or with your own therapist. So though we have availability of accessing those services on campus, we really encourage you to sort of like have that long-term relationship with a therapist, and you can count that as part of your costs of the program, your therapy costs, like as part of your financial aid.
Oh, okay, that's great to know. Thank you.
And we provide a list too.
Yeah.
There's a list from the program of therapists who are either art therapists, alum, that are willing to kind of work at a lower fee with our students.
Yeah. So I may mispronounce names, but Rahab, and if I said it wrong, you please correct me.
It's Rahab. It's
Rahab.
It's not rehab.
Okay.
We won't say that.
Yeah, hey, I'm so excited. I can't tell you. When I hear you talk about it, things just bubble up in me. I'm just so passionate about it. And you gave such a good, both of you, such wonderful presentations. It makes me even more excited. And I had a question, because you mentioned that you were in performance arts. Did you or didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Yes, okay, so there is I guess a coexisting open house for the performance or something?
Well, so there's different, so when I think about my work is performance art, which is different than like dance movement therapy and different than sort of like performance pedagogy and things like that. So it's a particular kind of like idea of like how artists who are performance artists who use their body and time, and how do we create like rituals with our clients. So there's expressive arts, which really covers music and dance movement and drama therapy. We're not expressive arts, we're focusing mostly on art, but it's a nice base because it's really learning to work with metaphor and ritual and symbol, and that can be expanded upon in any discipline after. But we want to like make sure we're giving you not just a little bit of everything, but really a deep focus into using metaphor and creative making. And then after that, people go off and do all sorts of different things.
Well, I've worked in performance arts. I'm a playwright, folklorist as well.
Oh,
Can I use that as part of my art?
Yes.
Absolutely.
For what I do. Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
Great.
We'd want it. We'd encourage it. We'd be like, please,
yes,
please bring it.
bring it.
Mhm.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Do you want to pick the next one?
Okay, Josie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I guess I would just have a quick question. Well, maybe it's not a quick or easy question, but this is a really rigorous program. And I was just interested in hearing a little bit about how the program encourages and supports like a healthy work-life balance, particularly during the pandemic for students and for the staff.
That is a good question. I think it was it's for the pandemic, especially, we really thought about how we are teaching and what we're teaching, because we also have to model. A lot of times people who are drawn to therapy are very empathic and tend to be very perfectionist. And those are things that pull you into the program, but those are things that will burn you out. So we actually have to learn the opposite of how to take care of ourselves better. So what we've been doing is offering a lot of spaces for students just to have opportunities to have like art making and utilize the tools we're trying to give our clients. Just sit and talk and make art, and really thinking about in the courses, as I said, not trying to make this hard, trying to incorporate that space, and really having to kind of check in with students. We have midterm evaluations where we check in with each student individually to kind of work with them to see, so they don't get lost and we don't see that the anxiety or the things that people are not doing for self-care, and really checking in on people. And just trying to make sure we're modeling that in the way we're teaching our courses. Every time there's a need, we're like, how can we provide a space for the students to be able to express that need, and have that. And sometimes it's a need to like have less, because we're like, here, we can come do this or do that or do that. I'm like, can we just not have anything this week? And really learning that, sometimes you got to take an A- in a class to get an A+ in life. Yeah, that you're trying to be a good art therapist, and sometimes you're going to have to make choices that you might have to not turn in an assignment to the best of your ability in that moment because you had to do something for your family or for yourself, and that's okay. There's not a judgment there, because the long game is for you to be a well-balanced art therapist. I don't know if you have anything else.
I guess the only thing I would add is we are a very small program, right? So we're always kind of with each other. And I feel like it's hard to honestly miss, like, of course, unless, someone's really good at hiding their, anxiety, but I don't know. I think we're pretty on top of it, and we're very just in it's a lot of communication, and we're very focused and present with our students. And, we're both alums and we're still here. So, clearly, right, there's something about the program that kind of keeps you a little as contained as possible, right? Of course, again, we always encourage your own therapy and right, help, but
and students haven't been shy about naming their concerns. So
no,
that's a good sign.
Not shy.
So it's a good sign that they feel comfortable enough to say,
yeah.
So did that answer your question, I hope, in some way?
It did, yes. Thank you so much.
Hannah, would you mind?
Hi, yes. My question is, I guess, a bit of like concern about, well, maybe that's the wrong way to phrase it, but I know Loyola is like a Catholic university, and you were speaking a lot about diversity, cultural competency, international relationships and stuff, and Catholicism has a very particular ideology. So how does that play into like the classroom setting, like whatever campus culture, don't care, but like the classroom setting and content and stuff? Is there room to push the boundaries, or is it, I don't know, more conservative? And
you are very conservative.
I'm very conservative. She's joking.
Yeah, I am. It's a very good joke.
And also because it's marriage and family therapy.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Both of
So
them?
yeah, so this is a good question. So one of the things that I think is actually helpful, so it's a Jesuit university,
yeah.
and one of the Jesuit missions is really to educate the whole person, a lot of community work. If anything, it actually brings into the classroom conversations about spirituality and religion, which I think get excluded from therapeutic conversations a lot. Our clients come in with their own backgrounds of spiritual, philosophical, and religious beliefs, and we might shy away from having those conversations because we don't feel prepared. Because oftentimes in culture, at least in the United States, it can be taboo to talk about those things because they tend to kind of create conflict. Our faculty and staff come from very diverse religious and spiritual, agnostic, atheist backgrounds. I am a queer person who is in a Jesuit university. We have an LGBTQ center here. It's, let me tell you, it's not as, the flags aren't waving as high, but it's here, you know what I mean? And I think that we have never, ever been told we cannot do something or say something or teach something by the institution, because I'm kind of moving in and out but though, so I think that is something that we've never, if anything, we've used it to an advantage, because there's such a, you know, there might be a crucifix in a classroom, so it kind of brings it into place and have a conversation about that. But we also go over colonial history, and you know, and we don't shy away from talking about the impacts of religion, but we also want to make sure people who have faith in religion also feel like they can participate in the conversation and not feel like they're excluded from that.
The only thing I would add is, and again, like Anthony, I did not come with a very strong Jesuit or Catholic background in any form, right? Both as a student and as a faculty. But actually last week during spring break, the school, someone had asked, how do we as faculty even take care of ourselves, right? And they offered for new faculty or someone in a new role, a retreat, where what we actually did and talked about for 4 days is also how to conceptualize these spiritual practices and exercises, and really make them your own, and then use them for your, you know, pedagogy, or just the way that you teach and the way that you incorporate it into your practice. I mean, one of the practices was to notice. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, we're therapists. This is like perfect, right? So it was really wonderful to be I would not identify as a religious person in any way. Be with people who identify as very religious, it's Jesuit, Catholic, and I mean Jewish, all in one space, just talking about these principles. So it's, I don't know if that helps.
Thank you. Kelly.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, I saw in the chat someone had asked, I know there's a 5-year limit on the psychology classes, but with the art credits, does that have to be within 5 years? That can be,
I don't know, as far away as you can imagine.
So 5 years only for psych.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And I had one other question. Do you know anyone who works and also does the 2-year program, or do people typically opt out of working during the program?
I worked during the 2-year program.
I did too, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think it's your personality and how much of a sort of masochist you are,
and how much sleep you need.
And what other obligations you have. I think it just depends. Some people just can do it and excel at it because they feel like if they really manage their time, they're like, I only have an hour to do this, and it feels like they can get it done. And other people are like, if I have 7 hours, I will use all 7 hours. So, but some people really need that time. So it's possible, but it really is to really be mindful about how that starts to feel. So it's always good to have like a plan B, if that's like your means of supporting. Sometimes people want to stay connected to a job, or, you know, so I think it's just a conversation that you have to have with kind of yourself. And if you want to learn more about like the program of like the amount of hours and time and class length and things, you can talk to us individually to help make that determination, but it's really up to everybody, you know.
Thank you.
Kelly?
Oh, Kelly,
Kelly.
there's
There's a lot of K's coming up. Kaylin? I think, or
Hi, yeah, Kaylin. Hi, how are you? That was a great presentation you gave, and I just kind of love the intimacy that Zoom and this pandemic has given us. I appreciate it. So I had some questions about the application process. I had a question about the letters of recommendation. So who qualifies? Like, what kind of people are we needing that qualify?
So anyone you want could qualify. I think you're trying to think about who can speak to what part you're trying to show, right? So if you want someone to really talk about, let's say let's say you have some clinical experience, not clinical experience, but you've had experience volunteering in certain spaces. And you're like, oh, I'd really like someone who can talk about my ability to work with people. It could be an employer that can speak to other skills you think are helpful as a therapist, listening, mediation, working well as a team. It could be an instructor who's in a psychology course that you're just like, hey, they can talk about my ability to understand these psychological processes. Okay. It's helpful to think about them also as you're completing a whole picture. So if you're looking at your application and saying like, oh, I want someone to talk to me more as an artist because I don't know if that's strong enough in my application, or as like a student because I don't know if that's strong enough, or like having that psychological insight, I don't know if that's strong enough. Now, you have to think about how we're going to take it though, right? So if you're like, my mom is going to write me this letter about how great I am, we're going to be like, there might be a bias there, maybe a little bias, you know, but you might have somebody who's a family member who you also like helped through some things, and they, you know, and you're like, they were my caregiver for a while, and I would like to write about how that was, right? So I don't want to give any absolutes because it's so contextualized. So my advice would be to look at your application and think about like what voice do you want amplified? What part of you just wasn't amplified in that application, and finding someone who you feel can speak to that.
Yeah, and I would say, I know in the chat, there's asking questions about, could the letter be from a therapist or a coworker? And I think going back to what Anthony said, just focus on what are they speaking to, right? And can they actually be as non-biased as obviously they possibly can, and let us know that you can. They've ideally, right, they've observed you in an environment where there's other people too, right, and where you've kind of had to in some ways do some sort of yeah, I'm thinking like for me, when I was a student, I was doing behavioral therapy, right? So I was very involved, not clinic, right? But they were people who have seen me interact with kids or with, you know, with someone else that would make sense for us to determine like, okay, you know, this is a skill that you're bringing into the profession.
And we've had like karate instructors, all sorts of, you know, people, neighbors who someone was helping like to bring meals to, professors. So it really is just like, I think appropriate if it, as you were saying, just like whatever you want to show us. I wish we had more concrete where it's like, I know, doctor, lawyer, and then that's it. We only accept them from those two. So Klein, if I'm pronouncing that correctly?
Hi, it's Klein. But my question is, one of my bachelor's degree is on child development, and you did talk about psychology courses and assessing whether that counts to my, or my child development courses count to psychology. So who do I come to and like see if that works for you guys?
Send it to us.
Just send it to us and say like, oh, I would like to know if this course will satisfy. And then we can, sometimes by the title we'll be like, yep. And sometimes we might ask you to look and send us, so if you want to even prep for it, send us a course description.
A little description.
Oh,
it's always helpful,
because most of my child development courses, they don't reflect like psychology on that title, so.
And that happens. Like sometimes there'll be a sociology course and it doesn't necessarily say psych, but in the bulletin it's clear it's like a lifespan or talking about something.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think Anisha's our last one.
Yep.
Oh no, and then Emily. She just popped back. Anisha.
Hi, I just have a quick question. Thank you so much for the presentation. I I do have a bachelor's in psychology from UCLA, but it's from 2012. So I'm just wondering if it's worth it for me to keep considering applying for this next for next year, or if you think that I should take the time off to kind of, because I will be working full time.
So, I mean, I think what I would recommend is just have us look over and see, because there might be certain classes that are like, yeah, these are great. And then maybe you need to take just maybe an updated psychopathology because the DSM is different, right? So that would be maybe what would happen. You might have one course that we feel like that there's more updated information that we would want you to take. And then a lot of times individuals take this at a community college or online.
Okay.
But if you feel free to email us and we can set up a time to review those transcripts with you.
Awesome. So it's not like I have to take all of those classes, because I do think I still need to take some of the art classes, and I was just concerned about how long that would take for me. But yeah,
we can take a look. Yeah.
Sorry, my dog is excited. But yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome.
I think Emily.
I'm sorry to add at the last minute. I was waiting to see if somebody asked the question, but I just want to say I really enjoyed the meeting. I'm actually currently in a program right now that it's great, but I'd love to maybe move to something specifically towards art. And I had two questions. I hope they won't be too long. Is it common for students that come to this program to maybe move on to a PhD?
Well, Maru just got.
I just completed my PhD last week.
Yeah.
So yes.
And that's
but most of us.
And that's available at LMU as well, or is it? Gotcha.
We have an EDD, and there is a PhD that is starting within the CFA. So we all have different kind of PhDs. So some of us have PhD international psychology, PhD in art theory, mine's in cultural and performance studies. So we all have different interests that we wanted to enhance with our PhDs and bringing our sort of art therapy and psychology to those different places. So we've gotten from all different kind of institutions. We have an EDD program here and a new PhD that is focusing on sort of cultural, multicultural. I can't remember what it is right now.
I don't know. It's brand new.
It's brand spanking new.
Starting in fall. I want to say.
So, but we do encourage often people to go get a PhD somewhere else, because if you get it here, it's going to be us again. And and you've seen us enough. Like, go meet some people. Get out
there.
Yeah, exactly.
And we do these kind of talks sometimes where we do panels where students usually are very interested in knowing, kind of, PhD, PsyD, making choices around that. And so we'll put together a little
panels,
little
and
thing to talk about it. And so,
Well, we have to run, but if you have any more questions, let's look in the chat really quick and see. I keep adjusting your. Psych or art courses.
Oh, okay.
As long as it's accredited. So a lot of community colleges. So I mean, in the Los Angeles area, there's like Los Angeles Community College, West LA Community College, but most cities have community college. If it is an online, if it is an only online school, just make sure see if they're accredited. And if you're not sure, just email us and we'll let you know if that's an accredited institution. And as far as like a PhD, like it's up to you if you would like a PhD. If you're going to work at a university, you need it. Like, they won't hire us if we don't have one. So a lot of the reasons we have them is because we wanted to go in academia. Some people in private practice like a PhD because it's another letter after their name. So people will be like, oh, there's more letters in that person's name. Or they get a PsyD, which is more clinically based. PhDs are more research based. PsyD is more clinical. So some people aren't interested in that more research part. And then Anisha, did you raise your hand again? Or is that, I can't tell if that was an old hand.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'll take that off.
No, it's fine. Because it popped up again that you raised your hand to remind us. But yeah, so if we didn't answer your question, please email us the question and we'll hopefully answer it via that way or set up a time to meet. But in the meantime, also be on the lookout. So if you were here, we have an email registration. We're planning to do later on in next month a faculty showcase where you get to see a little bit more about the faculty's work and kind of what they do to get a little bit of a feel of what this looks like. So yeah, you'll get an email letting you know when that is. All right. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. We are going to let you roam about the cabin. And again, the emails were in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and if not, you can, I think everyone has been in contact with Lori. So Lori could
yeah.
be your person.
Yeah.
And thank you. Greetings from Barbados.
Yeah. Great.
Sorry, where are your emails?
They're somewhere. I'll put them again.
We'll put them in the bed right before we leave.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
I have to say it out loud.
Okay, perfect.